I should have seen it coming. My sister Ashley had that specific tone in her voice. The one she'd used since we were kids when she wanted something. Not asking exactly. More like announcing a decision she'd already made and daring you to object. Just need it for the weekend, she said, plucking my car keys off the kitchen counter at Mom's house. You never use it anyway. Mom looked up from her crossword puzzle and nodded. You drive that old Honda most of the time. Let Ashley take the nice one. The nice one was a black Tesla Model S. Sleek, expensive looking, the kind of car that turned heads. I'd driven it to Mom's that morning for our usual Sunday brunch, and now Ashley's manicured fingers were already curling around the key fob. Sure, no problem, I said, taking another sip of coffee. Ashley's smile widened. Thanks, little sis. I've got this beach weekend with Marcus and his car's in the shop. Can't show up to the resort in my Civic, right? The resort, Mom repeated approvingly. Which one? The Grand Pelican. Down in Miramar Beach. 4-star reviews, ocean views, the works. Ashley was already heading toward the door. Marcus is treating me right. Unlike some people who drive beat-up Hondas at 32. I'd stopped defending myself years ago. At family gatherings I was always the practical one. The one who wore sensible shoes and drove a practical car and worked a job nobody really understood. When people asked what I did, Mom would wave her hand vaguely and say, something with computers and transportation. Have fun, I told Ashley. She paused at the door, jingling the key fob. Oh, I will. Try not to be jealous. After she left, Mom returned to her crossword. You're a good sister letting her borrow it. You know how hard she works at the salon. I didn't mention that Ashley had called me 4 times last month asking to borrow money. I'd sent it like always. Just like I'd been quietly paying half of Mom's mortgage for 3 years after Dad died, letting her think his life insurance was more generous than it actually was. The thing about being underestimated is that it becomes a kind of invisibility. Comfortable in its way. Nobody asks too many questions. Nobody expects too much. You exist in the background of family photos, the reliable one who shows up and nods and keeps things running smoothly. My phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. Thanks again. You're the best. Automobile 2 hearts. I sent back a simple thumbs up. Mom set down her crossword. You should come to the lake house next month. The whole family's going to be there for the 4th of July. Ashley's bringing Marcus, your cousin Jen is bringing her new boyfriend. It'll be fun. I'll try, I said, which was code for probably not. You always say that. Emma, you work too much. Whatever it is you're doing with computers and delivery trucks, it can wait for a weekend. Delivery trucks. That's what she thought I did. Coordinated deliveries, maybe. Dispatched routes. Something blue-collar adjacent that explained the practical Honda and the simple wardrobe and the general lack of flashiness in my life. I'll check my schedule, I said. Bring someone, Mom suggested, not for the first time. It would be nice if you had a +1 for once. Ashley had Marcus. Cousin Jen had her new boyfriend. Uncle Robert would bring Aunt Linda. Everyone paired off, coupled up, visibly successful in ways that family gatherings could measure and approve of. And then there was me. 32, single, driving a Honda Civic, doing something vague with computers. I'll see what I can do, I said, gathering my things to leave. Mom hugged me at the door. You're a good girl, Emma. I worry about you sometimes, but you're steady. That counts for something. Steady. Reliable. Practical. The words that had followed me my entire adult life. I drove home in my Honda Civic, the one with 140,000 miles and a slightly rattling passenger door. It ran perfectly, got great gas mileage, and nobody looked twice at it. Which was exactly the point. Monday morning I was at my desk when my phone buzzed. Derek from Fleet Management. Ms. Anderson, this is Derek from Fleet Management. I put down my coffee. What's up, Derek? Vehicle 47 just crossed state lines. It's currently in Alabama heading toward Florida. The GPS tracking shows it left the authorized radius yesterday afternoon around 2 p.m. I pulled up the fleet monitoring system on my screen. There it was, the black Tesla's route highlighted in red. Unauthorized movement. State line violation. No pre-approved travel authorization filed. The system was automatic. Every vehicle in our corporate fleet had GPS tracking, geofencing alerts, and compliance monitoring. It wasn't about trust. It was about liability. Insurance requirements. Federal DOT regulations for commercial vehicle operations. When you run a fleet of 73 vehicles across 5 states, you don't cut corners on documentation. Want me to send the standard protocol notification? Derek asked. I watched the little dot on my screen moving south on I-65. Ashley and Marcus, probably singing along to the radio, posting Instagram stories from the road. Not a care in the world. Vehicle 47. I'd added it to the fleet 8 months ago when we expanded into the premium transport division. Executive shuttles, corporate events, high-end client services. The Tesla was supposed to signal that Anderson Logistics Corporation was moving upmarket, competing with the established players. Instead, it was currently hauling my sister to a beach resort. Send it, I said. Derek hesitated. You sure? I know it's a family situation. That's exactly why it needs to go through proper channels. Send the notification. Yes, ma'am. The notification goes to 3 places simultaneously: the driver's phone, the registered contact, and our legal compliance team. It's automatic, triggered by the GPS system the moment unauthorized parameters are breached. You can't just take a company car across state lines without authorization. Insurance coverage changes at state borders. Liability shifts. Federal transportation regulations kick in. I'd explained all this to my legal team when we implemented the system. Sarah, our compliance officer, had insisted on 0 exceptions. Even for you? I'd asked. Especially for you, she'd said. You're the CEO. You get caught playing favorites with company assets, and it's your head on the block when the regulators come calling. So the system was automated. Impartial. No exceptions for anyone, including family members who borrowed cars without understanding what they were borrowing. My phone rang again 10 minutes later. Ashley. Emma? What the hell is this message I'm getting? I put her on speaker. What message? Something about unauthorized vehicle use and GPS tracking and immediate return required, and, wait, why is your name on this? It says, vehicle registered to Anderson Logistics Corporation, primary account holder, Emma Anderson. Oh, that, I said calmly. Yeah, it's a company car. Silence on the other end. I could hear highway noise in the background, the hum of the Tesla's electric motor. Then, a company car? Your company car? Technically it's registered to the corporation, but yes. I'm the primary account holder for all fleet vehicles. More silence. Then Marcus's voice in the background. What's wrong? Who is that? It's Emma, Ashley said, her voice tight. Apparently this isn't her personal car. What corporation? Ashley's voice had gone up an octave. You work in IT or something. Logistics, actually. I'm the CEO of Anderson Logistics Corporation. We handle transportation and fleet management for the southeastern region. 73 vehicles currently active across 5 states, with another dozen being added next quarter for the Gulf Coast expansion. Complete silence from the phone. Ashley? You still there? You're, what? I've been for 6 years. Started the company when I was 26 with a small business loan and 3 used vans. We've grown a bit since then. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, fast and shallow. The fleet management system automatically flags any vehicle that crosses state lines without proper authorization, I continued, keeping my voice professional. It's federal regulation compliance. DOT requirements for commercial vehicle operations. You understand? Emma, I'm on a beach weekend with my boyfriend. I understand that. Unfortunately, you're doing it in a vehicle that's subject to commercial transportation regulations. The notification already went to our legal team. They'll need you to file an incident report when you return. An incident report? Her voice cracked. Emma, this is insane. Standard procedure. Don't worry, it's mostly paperwork. Although, I pulled up the compliance documentation on my screen. You'll need to provide proof of insurance, current driver's license verification, and sign an acknowledgement that you were informed of the unauthorized use policy. Nobody told me there was a policy. Well, you did take the car without asking about any of that. I kept my voice pleasant, professional. The same tone I used with clients who tried to skirt contract terms. I assumed you checked. My fault for not being clearer about the vehicle's status. Marcus was definitely audible now in the background. What's going on? Are we in trouble? Like legal trouble? We need to turn around, Ashley said to him, her voice panicked. Then to me, Emma, please. Can't you just call off the dogs or whatever? Tell them it's fine. It's automated, Ash. The system already flagged it. Legal compliance has to follow through. Federal regulations aren't really optional, especially for commercial fleet operations. But it's your company. Which is exactly why I have to follow the rules. I pulled up our insurance documentation, scanning the relevant sections. If anything happened, accident, traffic violation, anything, and it came out that I let personal contacts use company vehicles without proper authorization, the liability alone would be enormous. We're talking potential seven-figure settlements depending on circumstances. Not to mention the regulatory penalties from the DOT. Our operating license could be suspended. I heard her tell Marcus they needed to find somewhere to turn around. Look, I said, softening my voice slightly, just drive back. Return the car to my place. File the incident report with Derek. He'll email you the form. It'll be fine. No penalties for you, just documentation for our files. Will there be consequences? For you, I mean. For me, I'll probably get a stern lecture from Sarah, our compliance officer, about keeping personal and professional boundaries clear. She's very particular about protocol. But that's my problem, not yours. Emma, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I know you didn't. It's okay. Just turn around when you can safely do so and we'll sort out the paperwork later. She hung up without saying goodbye. I could picture them on the highway, Marcus probably furious about the ruined beach weekend, Ashley trying to explain how her boring little sister turned out to be running a multi-million-dollar logistics operation. My desk phone rang. Sarah from legal. Emma, I just got flagged about vehicle 47. I know. My sister borrowed it without realizing it was a fleet vehicle. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Your sister took a company car across state lines without authorization? She thought it was my personal vehicle. How does someone mistake a corporate fleet vehicle for a personal car? By not asking questions and making assumptions. I pulled up the vehicle documentation. She's turning around. She'll file the incident report when she returns the vehicle. Emma, you know I have to document this. I know. Do what you need to do. The board's not going to like it. The board doesn't need to like it. They need to see that we follow our own protocols regardless of personal relationships. That's the point of having protocols. Sarah sighed. You're right. I'll process the standard paperwork. But Emma, maybe don't lend out company vehicles to family members anymore. Lesson learned. Mom called an hour later. Emma, Ashley just phoned me very upset. Something about you running a company? And tracking her with GPS? She's crying in a Waffle House parking lot. It's a fleet management company, Mom. We provide logistics services for corporate clients, manage transportation operations, handle DOT compliance. The car she borrowed is part of our commercial fleet, which means it has GPS tracking for insurance and regulatory purposes. Why didn't you tell us you were a CO? The question hung in the air between us. I tried to tell them. Multiple times over the years. But the words never seemed to land, never seemed to register as real. 4 years ago at Thanksgiving I'd mentioned starting the company. Dad had said, "That's nice, honey," and changed the subject to Ashley's promotion to senior stylist at her salon. 3 years ago I'd brought it up when Mom worried about my finances. She'd patted my hand and said, "Whatever makes you happy, dear," before asking if I'd met anyone special lately. Eventually I stopped trying. Let them think what they wanted to think. It was easier than fighting for recognition I didn't need. It never seemed important, I said finally. Not important? Emma, do you know how this looks? Ashley's out there thinking you're just some tech support person, and now she finds out you're running a whole company with GPS tracking and federal regulations. 73 vehicles across 5 states, Mom. 22 employees. We did $8.3 million in revenue last year. Silence on the other end. I could hear her breathing, the faint sound of her soap opera playing in the background. Million. Mom's voice was small, uncertain. Million. We're actually in talks with a larger firm about potential acquisition. If it goes through, the company valuation is estimated around $45 million. My stake would be approximately $32 million after taxes, investor buyouts, and debt service. I could hear her sit down heavily. The soap opera went silent, she'd muted it. We're expanding into the Gulf Coast region next quarter, I continued, my voice steady. Hence why I was looking at properties in Pensacola last month when I said I had a business trip. Not vacation properties, warehouse complexes for our new regional hub. The properties you were looking at? You said you were helping a friend. I was looking at commercial real estate for fleet operations. We need about 50,000 square feet for vehicle storage, maintenance facilities, and dispatch operations. The Pensacola market is competitive, but we've got a good location identified near the port access roads. Emma. Mom's voice cracked slightly. Why didn't you say something? Why didn't you make us listen? I tried to, Mom. Remember 2 years ago at Christmas when Uncle Robert said I should find a real career like Ashley? I told him I owned a business with 18 employees. He laughed and asked if I meant an Etsy shop. Oh God. She was quiet for a long moment. What did you say? I said sure, something like that. Then I changed the subject. Because it was easier than explaining commercial fleet operations and DOT compliance to someone who'd already decided I wasn't worth taking seriously. Emma, I'm so sorry. It's okay, Mom. It's not okay. We've been treating you like you're the one who needs help. Like you're struggling. And you've been paying half your mortgage for 3 years? Yeah. I kept my voice gentle. Dad's life insurance was about $60,000. Not nothing, but not enough to cover everything you needed. I didn't want you to worry about money while you were grieving. She started crying then. Real sobs, not the delicate tears she shed at sad movies. Ashley posted on Facebook last month. Mom said between sobs. She said you'd borrowed money from her for rent. I believed it. I commented with a sad face emoji. I thought you were barely getting by. I remembered that post. Ashley's humble brag about helping family in tough times. The reality was I'd given her $3,000 for an emergency that turned out to be a shopping trip to Miami with Marcus. She'd apparently rewritten the story for social media sympathy. Mom's fine. Really. I gave Ashley that money as a gift. What she chose to do with it or how she chose to frame it publicly, that's her business. It's not fine. I've been so dismissive. Like your life doesn't matter because you're not flashy about it. And you just took it. Why did you just take it? That was the harder question. Why does anyone accept being underestimated? Sometimes it's easier than fighting for recognition. Sometimes you get tired of proving yourself to people who've already decided who you are. Sometimes you figure your success is its own reward, and you don't need validation from people who can't see past their own assumptions. I didn't need you to see it, Mom. I just needed to build it. But we should have seen it. We should have asked questions. We should have listened when you tried to tell us. Yeah, I said softly. You should have. Ashley returned the Tesla that evening. She showed up at my condo, the condo I'd bought 2 years ago in the Harbor District, the one I told them was a rental with a good deal, holding the key fob like it might explode. The condo was 1,800 square feet with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the waterfront. I'd paid cash for it after a particularly good year, unwilling to deal with mortgage complications when I was already managing business debt. The building had a doorman, a fitness center, and parking garage with reserved spaces for residents. Ashley had never visited before. She stood in my doorway looking past me at the open-concept living space, the designer furniture, the original artwork on the walls. I filed the incident report, she said stiffly. Derek said it was fine. No penalties or whatever. Good. Thank you for handling that promptly. She didn't move from the doorway. Her eyes kept darting around my space, taking in details that contradicted every assumption she'd ever made about my life. Emma, I'm sorry. For taking the car? For everything. For assuming. For not asking questions. For posting that thing on Facebook about lending me money when it was the other way around. He was crying now, mascara starting to smudge. For treating you like you're the one who needs help when you've been. God, Emma, you've been taking care of all of us. I leaned against the doorframe. Ashley, you don't have to. Yes, I do. She wiped her eyes, smearing the mascara further. I've been horrible. We all have. Treating you like you're the struggling one, the practical one, the one who just never quite got it together. And the whole time you've been running a company. A real company with employees and millions of dollars and federal regulations. It's just logistics. Transportation management. It's not that impressive. Stop it. She said it sharply enough that I blinked. Stop downplaying it. You built something real. Something successful. And instead of bragging about it or shoving it in our faces, you just kept showing up to family dinners and letting us treat you like you were barely getting by. I didn't do it for recognition. I know. That's what makes it worse. She stepped inside, finally looking around my living room with fresh eyes. This place. How much did it cost? Ashley. How much? $650,000. I paid cash 2 years ago. She sat down heavily on my couch. A beautiful mid-century modern piece I'd found at an estate sale. Jesus Christ. I've been bragging about my apartment. My shitty apartment that costs $1,200 a month and has roaches. Your apartment is nice. It suits you. Don't do that. Don't be nice about this. I don't deserve nice. She looked up at me, her face blotchy from crying. Marcus said I should ask you about the company. Really ask, not just apologize and run away. He said if I can't even be bothered to understand what my own sister does for a living, then I don't deserve to be in her life. Marcus said that? Marcus has 3 sisters. He talks to them every week. He knows what their jobs are, what their struggles are, what matters to them. He was horrified when I told him I thought you worked in IT support or something. I sat down beside her on the couch. Hey, what do you want to know? So I told her. About starting with 1 van and a dream of building something stable, something mine. About the 18-hour days for the first 2 years, living in a studio apartment and eating ramen because every dollar went back into the business. About landing the first major contract. A regional hospital system that needed reliable medical supply transport. And the terror and exhilaration of suddenly having to hire employees, manage insurance, navigate DOT regulations. I told her about the first year we turned a profit and how I'd cried in my office because it felt impossible and I'd done it anyway. About learning to manage people, some older than me, some with more experience, all of them trusting me to make decisions that affected their livelihoods. I told her about the expansion into premium services, adding the Tesla and 2 Mercedes vans for corporate clients who wanted their executives transported in style. About the contracts with tech companies, law firms, medical practices, all of them requiring discretion, reliability, and the kind of operational excellence that keeps clients renewing year after year. Why didn't you tell us? Ashley asked when I finally paused. Why not just sit us all down and explain all this? I tried. Multiple times. Nobody was listening. So you just gave up on us? Not gave up. Just stopped trying to force it. I figured if you really wanted to know, you'd ask. And if you didn't ask, then maybe you didn't really want to know. She flinched like I'd slapped her. That's fair. Brutal but fair. We sat there for a moment in silence. Outside my windows, the sun was setting over the harbor, painting the water in shades of orange and gold. Can I see it? Ashley asked suddenly. The company. The actual facility. I want to see what you built. I took her the next day. The Anderson Logistics Corporation headquarters was a 35,000 square foot facility off the interstate, with vehicle bays, maintenance stations, a dispatch center and administrative offices on the 2nd floor. I'd bought the property 3 years ago when we outgrew our original rented space, financing it through a commercial loan that I'd paid off last year. Ashley walked through it like she was touring a museum, eyes wide, asking questions about everything. The maintenance bays where our mechanics serviced the fleet. The dispatch center where coordinators managed daily routes and client requests. The conference room where I met with corporate clients and negotiated contracts. You built all this? She asked, standing in the middle of the main floor, looking up at the high ceilings and modern lighting. With a lot of help. And a lot of loans. And a lot of sleepless nights wondering if I was completely insane. I gestured around the space. But yeah. I built it. She stopped in front of the wall in the lobby where our company logo was displayed. A stylized road disappearing into a horizon line, with Anderson Logistics Corporation, in clean sans serif font underneath. Your name, she said quietly. It's your actual name on the building. Well, it's my company. I told people my sister worked in IT. Her voice was barely above a whisper. When they asked what you did. Because I genuinely didn't know. And that's on me. For never asking. For never caring enough to ask. It's on both of us. I could have pushed harder to make you listen. No. She turned to face me, her expression fierce. You shouldn't have had to push. We should have listened the first time. We should have cared enough to ask questions and actually hear the answers. My operations manager, Michelle, poked her head out of her office. She was 53, former military, and ran the day-to-day operations with the kind of precision that made everything look effortless. Ms. Anderson, the conference call with the Houston Medical Center is in 10 minutes. The contracts are ready for review. Thanks, Michelle. I'll be right there. Ashley stared as Michelle disappeared back into her office. People call you Ms. Anderson. With respect. Like you're actually the boss. Usually they just call me Emma. But yeah, in formal contexts, I'm Ms. Anderson. Final decision maker on contracts, hiring, expansion plans, all of it. You have conference calls with Houston. And Atlanta and Nashville and Miami. We're negotiating service contracts for a regional hospital network. Medical supply transport, equipment transfers, patient transportation services. It's a big contract. Could add another 12 vehicles to the fleet and 6 new employees. She laughed suddenly, a slightly hysterical sound. I borrowed a company car to go to the beach. A company car owned by my CEO's sister who I thought was struggling to pay rent. Oh my God. Oh my God, Emma. To be fair, the Tesla was a bit of a splurge. Most of our fleet is practical cargo vans and box trucks. The premium vehicles are less than 10% of our operation. Emma. She grabbed my arm, her grip tight. Stop being reasonable and nice about this. I was awful. We were all awful. You deserved better than what we gave you. You weren't awful. You were just not paying attention. There's a difference. That's awful in its own way. Maybe worse because it means we couldn't even be bothered to see what was right in front of us. I didn't have an answer for that. Because she was right. Being actively cruel would have been painful, but at least it would have meant they saw me clearly enough to aim their cruelty accurately. Being ignored, being underestimated, being invisible despite being right there. That was its own kind of hurt. Sunday brunch the following week was different. Mom had apparently called everyone. Ashley, Uncle Robert, Aunt Linda, cousins I hadn't seen in months. They were all there when I arrived at Mom's house, sitting around the dining room table with expressions ranging from embarrassed to genuinely apologetic. Emma, Mom started as soon as I walked in, we wanted to. Please don't, I interrupted gently. Please don't make this into a big production. But it is a big thing, Uncle Robert said, his usually confident voice subdued. We've been treating you like you're the family charity case when you're the most successful person at this table. More successful than all of us combined, probably. I'm not the most. You're worth $45 million if that acquisition goes through, Ashley said. I Googled it. Business acquisitions over a certain size are public record. Your company valuation is listed in the business filings. You're literally about to be worth more than all of us combined. Aunt Linda was staring at me like I'd sprouted wings. $45 million? The company is potentially worth that in an acquisition scenario. My personal stake would be about $32 million after the transaction costs, investor buyouts and debt settlements. But that's only if we sell, and I'm not sure I want to. Why wouldn't you want to sell for $32 million? Cousin Jake asked, genuinely confused. Because I like running the company. Because I built it from nothing and I'm proud of what it's become. Because selling would mean walking away from 22 employees who depend on those paychecks. From clients who trust us to handle their logistics needs. From something I created. I looked around the table at my family, all these people who'd known me my whole life without really seeing me. Money isn't the point. It never was the point. Mom reached across the table and took my hand. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying before I arrived. Then what was the point, sweetheart? Building something that mattered. Proving to myself that I could do it. Creating jobs and solving problems and being good at something difficult. I squeezed her hand. And yeah, making enough money to help when someone needed it. Even if nobody noticed where the help was coming from. We noticed, Ashley said quietly. We just didn't ask questions about it. We took the help and didn't wonder how you could afford to give it. Uncle Robert cleared his throat. Emma, I owe you a serious apology. Last Christmas I told you to get a real job. Suggested you should try retail management or something stable like that. You said I should find something with benefits and a retirement plan. Stop wasting my time on internet startup nonsense. He winced. Your logistics company isn't an internet startup. No, it's a federally registered transportation corporation with DOT compliance, commercial insurance, union contracts for our mechanics, and 401k plans for all full-time employees. But I can see how you'd confuse the two. The table went quiet. Then Aunt Linda laughed, actually laughed. This surprised burst of sound that broke the tension. She's dragging us, Aunt Linda said, still laughing. Emma's dragging us and we deserve every second of it. We've been condescending to a literal millionaire CEO for years. That broke the ice. Everyone started talking at once, asking questions, apologizing, trying to understand how they'd missed so much for so long. I answered what I could, deflected what I couldn't, and mostly just tried to navigate this strange new dynamic where my family was actually seeing me for the first time. Later, when people were clearing dishes and making coffee, Ashley pulled me aside into Mom's kitchen. The Tesla, she said without preamble. Can I buy it from you? The car I borrowed. I want to buy it properly. What? I want to pay you back. Not just apologize, actually make it right. What's it worth? Ashley, you don't have to. Yes, I do. I've been thinking about it all week. I took something that wasn't mine, assumed it was fine because you're my sister and you just deal with it, didn't even bother to ask if it was okay. That's not acceptable. It doesn't become okay just because we're family. I thought about it, considering. The Tesla's 3 years old, about 42,000 miles on it. Fair market value would be around 42,000. She paled slightly. Hey, I can set up a payment plan. Figure something out. Or, I said gently, you could keep borrowing my old Honda whenever you need to. It's paid off, runs great, and you're welcome to use it. No GPS tracking, no federal compliance requirements, no incident reports. Emma. I'm serious. You don't need to buy a Tesla to prove a point or make amends. You need to respect boundaries and communicate clearly and actually listen when people tell you things about their lives. The car isn't the issue. It never was. She hugged me then, fierce and sudden, her face pressed against my shoulder. I'm going to be better. I promise. I'm going to actually know what's happening in your life instead of just assuming I know. I'd like that. And I'm going to tell people what you really do. When they ask about my family, I'm going to say, my sister runs a logistics company with 73 vehicles and millions in revenue. Not she does something with computers. I smiled against her hair. That works too. The acquisition fell through 2 months later. The larger firm got cold feet about the timeline for Gulf Coast expansion, wanting to slow down our growth plans to integrate with their existing operations. I wasn't willing to compromise on the expansion schedule or cede control of the operational decisions that had made us successful in the first place. We stayed independent, which meant I stayed CEO, which meant continuing to build something I believed in, at the pace that made sense for our clients and employees. Mom started calling me every Wednesday to ask about the business. Real questions about challenges and successes, not just polite small talk. She learned the names of my senior staff, asked about specific contracts, wanted to understand what DOT compliance actually meant for day-to-day operations. Ashley took me to lunch once a month and actually listened when I talked about logistics challenges, employee management, the complexities of scaling a service business. She introduced me to her friends as my sister. She's a CEO with genuine pride instead of vague embarrassment. Uncle Robert sent me a LinkedIn connection request with a note apologizing again for dismissing my work. He started referring potential clients my way, finally understanding what kind of services we actually provided. The black Tesla stayed in the company fleet, Vehicle 47, with its GPS tracking and federal compliance requirements and automated notification systems. Every time I saw it in the parking lot at headquarters, I thought about that weekend. About Ashley taking the keys without asking, about Mom shrugging it off, about the moment when the invisible suddenly became visible. Sometimes being underestimated is comfortable. It lets you move through the world without constant scrutiny, without pressure to perform or prove yourself in every interaction. There's freedom in being overlooked. But being seen, really seen for who you are and what you've built and what you're capable of, that's something else entirely. That's worth more than comfort. Worth more than invisibility. Worth more than any Tesla or acquisition offer or family approval. I still drive my old Honda most of the time. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because at the end of the day, the car you drive doesn't define your success. The business you build does. The problems you solve do. The people you employ and serve do. And yeah, the quiet satisfaction of knowing that when your family needs help, you can provide it, whether they understand where it comes from or not. That's worth everything.